Flames danced across the dark ruins of the colony. The sky was red with smoke and burning metal. Ethan walked slowly through the broken streets. His boots crunched over shattered glass and black dust. The smell of fire filled his helmet. He was a repair engineer, not a hero. He had come to this planet to fix power lines. He had never seen so much destruction. Buildings had fallen like toy blocks. Towers leaned at strange angles. Silence wrapped everything. Only the crackle of fire broke it. Ethan scanned the area with his visor. His mission was to search for survivors. So far, he had found only bodies, human and alien, burned and broken. He tried not to look at them for long. He told himself to keep walking. Then he heard it. A soft sound. It was small and weak, like a lost animal. He froze. His heart jumped. The sound came again from behind a collapsed wall. He ran toward it. A beam of twisted steel blocked the path. He pushed it aside with his exogloves. Heat stung his arms. Smoke filled his mask. He crouched and crawled inside. There she was. A small alien girl lay trapped under broken panels. Her skin was pale blue and glowing faintly in the firelight. Her hair was silver and tangled with dust. She did not move. Only her eyes moved, wide and full of fear. Ethan's hand shook. He had never seen her species before. She looked fragile, like glass. He whispered through his helmet that it would be all right. She blinked but said nothing. He checked the debris. One wrong move could crush her. He slid a jack from his tool pack and placed it under the metal beam. Slowly he raised it. The beam groaned and shifted. The girl whimpered. "Hold on," he said in a steady voice. The beam lifted just enough. Ethan pulled her free and wrapped her in his emergency blanket. Her skin was cold to the touch. Her breathing was thin and fast. A loud crack shook the ground. Part of the wall collapsed behind them. Flames surged closer. Ethan carried her in his arms and ran. His boots slipped on ash. Sparks rained down from above. The heat roared around him like a storm. He burst out into the open air. Cold night wind hit his faceplate. The firelight faded behind them. Ethan dropped to one knee and laid her on the ground. He scanned her body. Minor burns. No broken bones, dehydrated, malnourished, but alive. She opened her eyes again. They glowed like stars. She stared at him as if trying to understand who he was. Ethan pulled off his helmet. Smoke rose from his hair. He took a breath of the cold air. "It's over," he said gently. "You are safe now." She made a small sound. Almost a word. Then her eyes closed and she went still. Ethan's heart raced. He pressed his ear near her chest. A faint heartbeat. He let out a breath of relief. He looked around. The colony was gone. Everyone was gone. Only this girl had survived. Ethan stood and carried her toward his ship. The ground was cracked and glowing from underground fires. Ash fell from the sky like gray snow. His ship waited on a flat rock plain beyond the ruins. The landing lights glowed like tiny moons in the smoke. Ethan climbed the ramp and laid her on the medical bed. He hooked the scanner to her arm. It beeped weakly and showed stable vitals. He placed a thermal sheet over her and turned on the oxygen mist. She shivered but did not wake. Ethan sat beside her. He stared at her small hands. They were thin and delicate, with tiny glowing lines that pulsed softly. She looked peaceful now. Too peaceful for someone pulled from fire. He wondered what her name was, where her family had gone, why she had been left behind. Outside the ship, the fire still raged. Inside, there was silence. Ethan leaned back in the chair. He should leave this planet. He should call the rescue fleet. But when he looked at the sleeping alien girl, he felt something strange. She had no one else, and he could not walk away. He pulled the blanket tighter around her small body and whispered to the quiet air. "I've got you," he said. Then he watched her breathe, slow and steady, as the ship hummed softly in the dark. The ship drifted in low orbit above the ruined planet. Inside, the air was warm and quiet. The alien girl slept under a soft thermal sheet. Ethan sat near her bed and watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. She had survived the fire. But she was still so weak. Ethan checked the medical scanner again. It showed stable signs. No broken bones. Burns healing. Still, she had not opened her eyes since he brought her aboard. Her body looked small and fragile on the large medical bed. He stood and went to the galley. He poured warm water into a small cup and stirred in a drop of nutrient serum. It smelled like sweet grain. He placed the cup on the counter beside the bed. The ship hummed softly as he moved around. He pulled out bandages and clean cloth. He sat by her side again and gently cleaned her wounds. She flinched at first, even in sleep, but then relaxed. Her skin glowed faintly blue under the soft cabin lights. Hours passed. Ethan sat with his elbows on his knees. He was used to fixing machines, not lives. He kept thinking about the colony. There had been no other survivors. Only her. He wondered what she had seen. What she had lost. A small sound broke the silence. Ethan looked up. The girl's eyes were open. They glowed like cold stars, silver and deep. She blinked slowly. Her gaze moved across the room and stopped on him. Ethan gave a small smile. "You are safe here," he said. She did not reply. She just stared at him. Her eyes were wide, cautious, like a wild creature seeing a human for the first time. Ethan lifted the cup of warm water. He held it near her lips. "Drink," he said softly. She turned her head away. He waited. He dipped his finger in the warm liquid and let a drop fall on her lips. She blinked again, then opened her mouth a little. He tilted the cup. She drank a few sips, then turned her face into the pillow. It was enough. Ethan set the cup down and sat back. He felt a small relief in his chest. She was fighting to live. The ship circled the planet for another day. Ethan ran system checks and small repairs. He came back to her bed often. She watched him with quiet eyes but did not speak. At night, when the cabin grew cold, she curled close to the heater. Ethan placed a folded blanket under her head like a pillow. She pulled it close and closed her eyes. The days blurred together. Each day she drank a little more. She sat up on her own. She touched the controls near her bed and watched the lights flash. Ethan caught her looking at him when she thought he was not watching. On the fourth day, she tried to stand. Her legs trembled and she almost fell. Ethan rushed forward and caught her before she hit the floor. She froze in his arms. Her body was tense and trembling. "It's all right," he said. "I will not drop you." She looked up at him. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Ethan helped her sit back on the bed. He gave her a piece of soft bread soaked in broth. She chewed slowly. A faint color came to her cheeks. She slept again after eating. Ethan sat by her side, thinking. He knew the rescue ships would return soon. They would search the colony ruins again. They would ask questions. They would want to take her away. Ethan looked at her peaceful face. She looked younger now, like a child who had run too far and fallen asleep in a safe place. He had never felt protective of anyone before. He had lived alone for years, fixing ships and traveling station to station. But something inside him had shifted. He wanted her to survive. He wanted her to smile one day. When she woke again, he handed her a small music chip. He pressed the button. A soft melody filled the air. She tilted her head, listening. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed faintly with the rhythm. Ethan watched her eyes soften. For the first time, her lips curved into a small smile. It was quick, like sunlight slipping through clouds, but it was real. Ethan felt something warm rise in his chest. Maybe she could heal. Maybe they both could. The ship drifted through the stars while the ruins of her old world burned far below. Inside the small cabin, a fragile life had begun to glow again. The third sunrise rose behind the shattered planet. The soft red glow spilled through the viewport of Ethan's ship. Inside, the alien girl sat on the floor wrapped in a thick blanket. She was stronger now. Her silver hair was brushed and clean. She watched the light with wide, glowing eyes. Ethan sipped cold tea while checking the ship logs. He kept glancing at her. She was quiet as always, but she no longer looked empty. There was life in her gaze. He had started calling her Little Starlight in his head. She still had no name. Ethan knew they could not stay in orbit forever. The supply tanks were almost empty. He needed to land at the next trade station to refuel. But he also knew the risks. He did not know what species she was. If anyone saw her, they might report her. People feared what they did not understand. And people were cruel to the weak. Still, he had no choice. He locked her blanket around her shoulders and guided her to the co-pilot seat. She watched his hands as he typed coordinates. The ship engines rumbled and turned toward the stars. She held the armrests tight when the ship jumped to light speed. Her glowing lines pulsed brighter with the sudden movement. Ethan smiled. "It's just the jump. We're safe," he said. She did not reply, but her grip slowly loosened. Hours later, they arrived at Waypoint Delta, a busy trade station built into a hollow asteroid. Lights glittered like a city trapped inside stone. Ethan docked at a quiet corner of the hangar. He helped her into a clean gray cloak to hide her glowing skin. "Stay close," he said. She nodded once, eyes serious. They walked through the station's steel corridors. The air was filled with voices, footsteps, and engine hums. Traders shouted prices. Robots rolled past carrying crates. The girl stayed close behind him, silent as a shadow. They reached the supply desk. Ethan paid for water cells, protein packs, and oxygen filters. The clerk handed him a datapad for identity scan. Ethan froze. He had no registration for her, no record, no name. If he scanned and they saw her with him, questions would follow. He needed to think fast. He smiled casually at the clerk. "The child is under medical care," he said. "She lost her parents in the colony fire." The clerk frowned. "Is she registered?" "She is under my personal emergency protection," Ethan replied. The clerk hesitated. "You know station rules. No alien minors without clearance." "She will get clearance soon," Ethan said. "Until then, she stays with me." The clerk looked at the girl. Her eyes were half hidden under the hood. She looked down and clutched Ethan's coat. Something softened in the clerk's face. He sighed and pushed the datapad back. "Fine, get the clearance soon. Or next time we report it," he said. Ethan nodded quickly and gathered the supplies. They left fast, hearts pounding. In the crowded corridor, Ethan felt her small hand slip into his. It was cold and trembling. He squeezed it gently. Back on the ship, she pulled off her hood and looked at him. Her eyes were bright but wet. "They would have taken you," Ethan said quietly. "You stayed brave." She tilted her head. Then she touched her chest with her small fingers and pointed at him. It was not a word, but Ethan understood. She was saying she trusted him. That night, while she slept curled up on the seat beside him, Ethan stared out at the stars. He thought about what the clerk had said. No alien minors without clearance. There would be more rules. More eyes, more people who would try to take her away, and he would not let that happen. He opened the ship network and locked all outside signals. He erased the logs of their visit. He knew it was dangerous. Hiding her made him a criminal in some sectors. But when he looked at her peaceful face, he felt no doubt she had no one, and now she had. Ethan whispered to the quiet cabin. "No, one will take you," he said. The stars drifted past the window like silent witnesses. The world outside might see her as a strange creature, or a lost thing. But to Ethan, she was becoming something more, something he would protect, even if the whole galaxy stood against him. The ship drifted through a silent sea of stars. Far from the crowded stations and the noise of markets, the cabin felt calm. Ethan liked it this way. It gave him time to think. It also gave her time to heal. The alien girl sat cross-legged on the floor near the heater. The blanket had slipped from her shoulders. Her silver hair caught the soft cabin lights. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed gently like quiet music. She watched Ethan as he worked on a broken engine coil at the table. Her head tilted slightly every time he moved his hands. "See this," Ethan said. He held up a small copper wire. Her eyes followed the wire. He pressed the wire into the coil and the screen flickered with green light. "Power," Ethan said with a smile. She blinked, then pointed at the glowing light. "Yes," Ethan said. "Power," she repeated the word softly. Her voice was thin but clear. Ethan's heart lifted. It was the first real word she had spoken. He decided to try again. He pointed at himself. "Ethan." She stared at him, then touched her chest. "Ethan," he laughed quietly. Close enough, then he pointed at her. "You," she looked down. Silence stretched for a moment. She whispered something in her own language, a soft sound like wind through glass. Ethan nodded gently. "That is your name?" She nodded once. It was a beautiful sound, but hard for his tongue. He tried to repeat it and made her laugh. It was the first time he heard her laugh. It was like tiny bells. "May I call you Lyra?" he asked. She tilted her head and nodded again. "Lyra," he said. She smiled. From that day, she was Lyra. Lyra began to follow him everywhere. She walked behind him through the narrow halls. She watched how he cleaned the filters and checked the engines. Sometimes she pointed at objects, and he told her the words. Cup. Star. Ship. She repeated them in her soft voice. Her words came slowly but surely. Each one was like a new light flickering on in the dark. At mealtimes, she sat opposite him and mimicked the way he used a spoon. She spilled food often, but each day she improved. Ethan praised her gently. "Good," he said. "Very good." Her eyes would shine with quiet pride. One evening, Ethan found her sitting at the control panel. She had pulled off a screen cover and was poking the buttons. The star map flickered with bright trails of light. "Careful," Ethan said, rushing forward. She looked up, startled, then smiled. He showed her how the controls worked. She watched each movement closely. She touched the stars on the screen and whispered their names after him. "Vega," he said. "Vega," she repeated. "Orion Gate. On," she said carefully. Ethan realized she was learning fast, faster than he expected. At night, he sometimes played soft music. Lyra loved it. She would sit on the floor, eyes closed, and let the melody wash over her. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed gently with the rhythm. Once she hummed along. The sound was delicate like crystal chimes. Ethan watched her with quiet wonder. She was becoming alive again. One day, while Ethan repaired the water recycler, Lyra came to him holding something. It was a small piece of scrap metal shaped like a bird. She had bent it carefully with her small hands. She held it out to him, shy but proud. "For me?" Ethan asked. She nodded. He took the little bird and smiled. "Thank you, Lyra." She beamed at him. It was a simple gift, but it felt like a treasure. Weeks passed. They visited small outposts and silent moons. Ethan took only quick jobs. He avoided crowded ports. Wherever they went, Lyra stayed close to him. If strangers passed, she would hide behind his coat. But when they were alone, she walked freely through the ship, exploring every corner. She no longer looked like a broken thing pulled from fire. She looked like someone learning how to live. At night, she sometimes sat by the window and stared at the stars. Ethan would sit beside her. She would point at distant lights and ask their names, he told her, and she would whisper them softly, as if keeping them safe. One quiet night, as the ship drifted near a glowing nebula, Lyra curled up on the seat beside him. "Home," she said softly. Ethan turned to her. "Home," he repeated. She touched his arm and smiled. Ethan felt a warmth he had not known in years. She was no longer just a survivor. She was becoming part of his world. And maybe, he thought he was becoming part of hers. The stars looked peaceful outside the viewport. The ship floated near a quiet mineral moon. Inside, everything felt calm. Lyra hummed softly while sorting shiny bolts on the table. Ethan watched her from the pilot seat. She had grown stronger. Her steps were steady. Her voice was clear. She smiled more often now, but the peace did not last. The first sign came as a message ping on the console. Ethan opened it without thinking. A line of words glowed on the screen. "Unregistered alien miner spotted with human engineer. Bounty active. Return to Central Authority." Ethan's chest tightened. He closed the message fast and locked the system. He sat still for a long moment. His mind raced. Someone had seen them. Someone had reported her. He turned to Lyra. She was busy lining the bolts into shapes. She did not see the fear on his face. Ethan stood and walked to the storage room. He checked the emergency supplies. He checked the hidden compartment where he kept false ID tags. He had planned to use them only if he ever had to smuggle parts. Now he might need them to protect her. That night, when Lyra was asleep, Ethan sent a hidden message to an old contact named Rax. Rax had once worked with him on broken satellite chains. He also knew how the black market worked. Rax replied within minutes. "There's a price on her. Mining syndicate. They claim she has recovered tech from the fallen colony. They think she is property." Ethan's jaw clenched. "She's not property," he typed back. "I know, but they won't care. Get off the main lanes. They will hunt you." The next day, Ethan changed their route. He avoided major stations. He stayed off the trade network. Lyra noticed the tension. "Danger," she said softly, watching his face. "Yes," Ethan said, "but I will keep you safe." She nodded, though her eyes were worried. They traveled quietly for several days. The ship moved through dead zones with no signals. Ethan kept weapons charged and shields ready. Then the hunters came. It started with a faint beep from the radar. 3 small ships appeared behind them. No trade beacons. No ID codes. Ethan's heart kicked hard. "Strap in," he said quickly. Lyra obeyed, her eyes wide. The 3 ships closed in fast. Ethan pushed the engines. The ship roared forward. Space blurred around them. A shot flashed past their wing. The hull shuddered. Alarms screamed. Ethan swerved through an asteroid belt. The hunters followed. Their engines flared like angry comets. "Hide," Ethan said sharply. Lyra unbuckled and crawled into the maintenance duct. She curled inside the shadows, trembling. Another blast shook the ship. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Ethan gritted his teeth and dove between 2 spinning rocks. The hunters fired again, but the asteroids blocked their aim. He dropped a burst of decoy flares. The hunters split apart to dodge them. Ethan cut the main power and drifted into the shadow of a massive rock. The ship went dark and silent. The hunters scanned the area. Lights sweeping. Ethan held his breath. Minutes passed. Slowly, the hunters turned away and vanished into the black. Ethan waited until their signals were gone. Then he restarted the engines. The lights hummed back to life. Lyra crawled out of the duct. Her eyes were wide with fear. She ran to him. "Are you hurt?" she asked in a small voice. Ethan sat down hard in the pilot seat. His shoulder ached where a panel had struck him. A thin line of blood ran down his arm. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice shook. Lyra climbed onto the seat beside him. She held his bleeding hand gently. "You saved me," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. She was trembling but alive. "Yes," he said quietly, "and I always will." That night they floated in the dark side of the asteroid. The ship lights stayed off. Only the faint glow from Lyra's skin lit the cabin. Ethan watched her as she bandaged his arm with small, careful hands. She worked in silence, her face calm but her eyes wet. She finished and sat beside him. "Stay," she said. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. She rested her head on his arm. Outside, the stars were cold and silent. Inside, Ethan's heart burned with a single truth. The galaxy now saw her as something to hunt, but to him, she was something to protect, and he would not let them take her. The ship floated in deep space, hidden far from trade lanes. Days had passed since the attack. The cabin was quiet, but the fear had not fully left. Lyra stayed close to Ethan wherever he went. She was calmer now, yet her eyes still searched the shadows when the engines hummed. Ethan pretended to be relaxed, but inside he stayed alert. Every beep from the console made his heart jump. Then one morning, a secure message arrived from Rax. "There is a sanctuary," it said. "Outer Rim. Hidden world. They take in lost children from fallen colonies. No one can touch her there." Ethan stared at the words. A sanctuary. A place where she would be safe. Where no one would hunt her. He sat for a long time in silence. When Lyra walked in, carrying a small tray of fruit slices, Ethan forced a smile. She set the tray down and sat cross-legged near his feet. "Lyra," he said gently. She looked up at him with her bright silver eyes. "There is a place," Ethan said. "A home with others like you. They can keep you safe." She blinked. The glow on her skin dimmed a little. "You want me to go?" she asked softly. Ethan's chest tightened. "I want you to live without fear," he said. Lyra lowered her head. She stayed silent. 2 days later, the sanctuary planet came into view. It was a green world wrapped in pale clouds. Forests covered the valleys. Silver rivers curled like threads across the land. Ethan brought the ship down slowly. The landing bay stood inside a mountain. Tall trees swayed in the wind outside. Lyra stood at the window, staring at the green world. She said nothing. When they landed, 2 robed caretakers walked toward the ship. They smiled warmly. One of them spoke softly. "She will be safe here. We will care for her. She will be with her own kind." Ethan nodded stiffly. He turned to Lyra. She was clutching the metal bird she had made weeks ago. Her small hands were shaking. "You will be safe," Ethan said. "No one can hurt you here." Lyra stepped closer to him. "Will you stay?" she asked. Ethan felt the words cut through him. "I cannot," he said. "They will not let me, but I will visit if I can." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. She opened her small pack and pulled out a sheet of metal. She scratched words on it with a sharp bolt and held it up. The words were crooked and shaky, but clear. I want to stay with you. Ethan's breath caught. She dropped the sheet and grabbed his coat. I do not want to be safe without you, she said in her soft voice. Ethan looked at the caretakers. They waited silently. He looked back at her. She was trembling, but her eyes were steady. She had chosen. Ethan knelt in front of her. Lyra, he said gently, if you stay with me, life will be dangerous. People will chase us, she nodded. I know. You might never see your kind. Again, he said. I see you, she whispered. Ethan felt his heart break and heal at the same time. She was not just someone he had saved. She was family. Ethan stood and faced the caretakers. She is not staying, he said. The older caretaker frowned. You are making a mistake. She would be safe here. She will be safe with me, Ethan said firmly. The caretaker sighed. Then you must disappear. They will not stop searching. I know, Ethan replied. He turned and led Lyra back to the ship. The caretakers watched silently as the ramp closed. As the engines roared to life, Lyra stood beside him. You choose me, she said softly. Yes, Ethan said. I choose you. She slipped her small hand into his. The ship rose from the mountain bay and shot into the sky. They left the sanctuary behind. The green world shrank into a dot of light. Ahead of them stretched the silent black sea of space. They had no plan. No map, only each other, and that was enough. The ship drifted through endless black. Days had turned into weeks. The galaxy's busy lanes were far behind them now. Ethan steered by old maps and half-forgotten coordinates. He chose empty paths where no patrols watched. It was lonely space, silent and vast, but safe. Lyra grew stronger each day. She no longer hid when the engines roared. She walked the halls of the ship with steady steps. Her silver hair shone like liquid light. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed bright with each laugh she gave. They spoke more now. Hungry, she would say, tapping her stomach. Ethan would smile and heat her favorite fruit paste. Fix, she would say, pointing at loose panels. Together they worked side by side. She had once been a frightened shadow. Now she was becoming sunlight. One morning a signal beacon appeared on the edge of their scanners. It marked an abandoned colony world. No population, no traffic, no patrol warnings. Ethan stared at the screen for a long time. Want to see it? He asked. Lyra stood behind him and peered at the glowing map. Yes, she said softly. They descended through thin clouds. The world below was covered in green fields and wide blue lakes. Tall silver grass swayed in the wind. White birds wheeled through the sky. Ethan guided the ship to a flat meadow near a crystal lake. The landing struts touched soil with a gentle thump. For a moment neither of them moved. Then Lyra unbuckled and ran to the ramp. The door opened. Warm wind swept inside, carrying the smell of flowers. Lyra stepped onto the grass barefoot. She froze, eyes wide. Then she laughed and ran forward. Her glowing lines shimmered under the sunlight. Her laughter rang like bells across the open air. Ethan walked down after her. He felt the soft earth under his boots. It had been years since he had stood on a world that felt alive. Lyra ran to the lake and knelt at the edge. She dipped her fingers into the water and gasped at the cold. Ethan smiled. She turned and waved at him. Come, she called. He joined her. They sat side by the shining lake. For the first time since he had found her, she looked completely free. In the days that followed, they made a small camp beside the ship. Ethan built a shelter from spare panels and local stone. Lyra helped, carrying light beams and tying cables. At night, they lit a small fire pit. They cooked simple meals and watched the stars appear. Lyra listened to Ethan's stories about the places he had seen. Cold moons, she said with a shiver. Very cold, he replied with a grin. She told him small words from her language. He tried to copy them and made her laugh until her eyes sparkled with tears. They planted seeds from the ship's stores. Lyra knelt in the soil with careful hands. This will be food, Ethan explained. Home food, she said. Yes, he said quietly. Weeks passed. The garden grew. Their shelter grew too. They built shelves, beds, and a tall pole to catch solar power. Lyra painted the walls with bright colors from crushed flowers. She drew stars and birds and strange flowing shapes. Ethan hung her little metal bird above the doorway. It spun in the breeze, flashing silver in the sun. She smiled every time she saw it. One evening, a soft storm rolled across the plains. Rain drummed on the roof while thunder echoed in the distance. Inside, the fire crackled warm. Lyra curled beside Ethan on the floor with a blanket wrapped around her. She rested her head on his shoulder. "Safe," she whispered. "Yes," Ethan said. "Safe." She closed her eyes, her breathing slow and calm. Ethan watched her glowing lines fade gently as she drifted to sleep. Outside, rain washed the world clean. Inside, he felt peace he had not known in years. The man who once walked alone among stars now had someone waiting beside him. She had been a lost child of fire. Now, she was his reason to stay, and together, they had found their home among the stars.